Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about minimalist photography.
Okay.
And specifically, this new camera that's got everyone buzzing,
Uh-huh.
the Sigma BF.
Right.
It's got this like back to basics kind of feel.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
It's got a full frame sensor.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
That's interesting.
So to unpack all of this, we're using photographer Liang's article on lensclear.com.
Okay.
And he asked the big question, is this the minimalist full-frame camera we've been waiting for?
I mean, it's a good question. Full frame sensors, you usually find those in cameras that are just loaded with features.
Right.
They deliver that incredible image quality, especially in low light, and that beautiful background blur, a bokeh.
Right.
To combine that with a stripped down design, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a bold move from Sigma.
For sure.
But I guess the question is, what does minimalist even mean when we're talking about a camera?
Right.
Does that actually make it easier to use, or is that just like a marketing tactic?
Right.
What does easy to use even mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key question, isn't it? Because it really depends on your individual needs as a photographer.
Right.
And your priorities. So for some, a minimalist design, that might mean fewer distractions.
Right.
So they can really focus on composition
Yeah.
and capturing the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for others, it might actually feel limiting, especially if they rely heavily on advanced features.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Leo seems to think that street photographers, travel photographers, hybrid shooters, those are the people that might find this camera especially appealing.
Okay.
What do you think that is?
Well, imagine you're a street photographer, right?
Yeah.
You're navigating crowded streets, trying to capture those fleeting moments.
Right.
A compact, discreet camera, that could be a game changer. Allows you to blend in, react quickly, capture those candid shots.
Right.
Without drawing attention to yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And then thinking about travel photographers, I can see the appeal of a lightweight camera,
Oh, yeah.
especially if you're like hiking or backpacking.
Absolutely. Every ounce counts when you're on the move.
Exactly.
And plus, a minimalist camera, maybe with like a fixed prime lens,
Right.
that might encourage a more thoughtful approach to composition. It kind of pushes you to explore different perspectives.
Yeah, yeah.
And really connect with your environment.
That's cool. And then there's the hybrid shooters, right? People who kind of want one camera that does both stills and video.
Right.
And Sigma, and including video recording capabilities, that is interesting,
Yeah.
especially because they're mostly known for their lenses
Right.
and still cameras.
Yeah.
So do we think this is just like a basic add-on, or could this be a legitimate video tool?
Yeah, that's hard to say without seeing the specs, but I think it suggests that Sigma is maybe trying to appeal to a wider audience.
Right.
Now, it could be that they're aiming for simple, streamlined video, just to capture those casual clips.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they might surprise us
Right.
with some, robust video features that rival dedicated video cameras.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, speaking of interesting features, Leo mentions this kind of cryptic internal storage on Sigma's website.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think that's all about?
I'm fascinated by this too. Imagine if they incorporated like built-in SSD storage.
Right.
You could potentially shoot, edit, and share your work all directly from the camera.
Why?
You wouldn't even need memory cards or external devices.
Yeah, that would streamline your workflow for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's talk about the potential downsides of minimalism.
Okay.
I mean, we all love the idea of less is more, but what are we potentially sacrificing to get that simplicity?
Right. Well, Leo outlines a few areas where the Sigma BF might make some compromises.
Right.
Things like the autofocus system, in-body image stabilization, the electronic viewfinder, and even battery life.
Okay, so let's start with autofocus.
Okay.
How much of a concern is this potential simplification of the autofocus system?
It really depends on your shooting style and the situations you typically find yourself in.
Right.
So for everyday photography in good light, a basic autofocus system might be perfectly fine.
Okay.
But for action shots, low light photography, or subjects that are moving unpredictably,
Right.
you really need a more sophisticated autofocus system.
Okay, makes sense. And then there's IBIS, or in-body image stabilization. What does that do, and why might it be significant if it's not included?
Imagine you're shooting handheld in low light or trying to get that really smooth video footage.
Right.
IBIS, it helps compensate for camera shake.
Oh, okay.
So you get sharper images and steadier video.
Huh?
Now, without it, you might need to use a tripod more often.
Right.
Or settle for lower shutter speeds, and that could introduce some blur.
Got it.
So it's a valuable tool for sure.
Okay, so next up we have the electronic viewfinder, or EVF.
Yes.
What's the difference between that and a traditional optical viewfinder?
So with an optical viewfinder, you're looking directly through the lens,
Okay.
seeing the scene as it is.
Right.
An EVF, it's showing you a digital representation of the scene that the camera sensor is capturing.
Okay.
Now, the benefit of an EVF is it can display additional information,
Right.
like exposure settings, histograms, focus peaking.
Oh.
A lower resolution EVF might not offer the same level of clarity and detail,
Right.
so it could be a little harder to judge critical focus and exposure.
Okay, so it's a trade-off between simplicity and that functionality.
I think so.
Okay, and finally, battery life. Smaller camera usually means smaller battery, right?
That's right. And if you're someone who spends hours shooting out in the field,
Right.
limited battery life could be a major inconvenience.
Yeah.
You might find yourself carrying multiple batteries, constantly searching for power outlets, which kind of defeats the purpose of a minimalist setup, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. All right, before we get too caught up in the pros and cons of minimalism,
Okay.
let's look at the competition.
All right.
What other minimalist full-frame cameras are out there that the Sigma BF will be going up against?
Well, there's the Leica M series cameras,
Okay.
kind of the gold standard for minimalist rangefinder cameras,
Yeah.
known for their exceptional image quality, compact size, and that manual focus.
Right.
But that legendary Leica craftsmanship, it comes at a price.
Yeah, they're definitely an investment.
They are.
What about Sony?
Sony has the Alpha 7C series,
Right.
which are also known for their compact size.
Right.
However, it's a little more feature-packed than what it seems like the Sigma BF is going for.
Okay.
So it will be interesting to see how they position themselves
Right.
in terms of price and features.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the wild card.
Okay.
The rumor that Fujifilm might be entering the full-frame market.
Oh, wow.
That would shake things up considerably.
Absolutely.
Fujifilm is, like, incredibly popular for their APS-C cameras.
Right.
Particularly their film simulations.
Yes.
And their unique aesthetic.
Absolutely.
So if they were to release a full-frame camera, especially one with a minimalist design, it would be a direct competitor to the Sigma BF.
That's true.
It would be fascinating to see how they differentiate themselves.
For sure.
Okay, well, for now, let's refocus on the Sigma BF.
All right.
And what Leo seems to be most excited about.
Okay.
He highlights 4 key things: outstanding image quality,
Mm-hmm.
intuitive design, a competitive price point,
Right.
and a camera that sparks creativity.
That's great.
Those are some pretty high expectations.
Yeah.
But not unreasonable given what we know about Sigma's capabilities.
That's true. They have a track record of producing high-quality lenses and cameras.
Exactly.
And they're at competitive prices.
Right.
What I find most compelling, though, is this idea of a camera that sparks creativity. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's about having a tool that inspires you to get out there and explore
Absolutely.
and capture the world through your unique perspective.
Exactly. It's not just about the gear. It's about the connection that you make
Right.
with your subject
Yeah.
and the story you want to tell.
I think that's a great place to pause and reflect.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but there's so much more to explore.
There is.
Welcome back. So we've been kind of dissecting this Sigma BF camera.
Right.
But as Leo emphasizes in his article, minimalism in photography.
Yes.
It's about so much more than just the gear.
Absolutely. It's a mindset,
Right.
a way of approaching photography with intention
Okay.
and simplicity,
Mm.
stripping away the distractions.
So how do we actually do that? Like, how do we shift our thinking to embrace this more minimalist approach in our own photography?
Well, one way is to kind of look beyond photography itself.
Yeah.
Leo actually suggests exploring resources on minimalist living
Yeah.
and design in general.
Yeah.
You know, think about those beautifully spare minimalist homes.
Right.
You see them in magazines. There's a sense of calm and clarity.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe we can apply those same principles to our compositions,
Okay.
seeking out clean lines, negative space, a sense of balance.
That's interesting. So it's like taking inspiration from a different art form and applying it to photography.
Exactly.
What other tips does Leo offer?
He recommends immersing yourself in the minimalist photography community.
Okay.
Joining online groups,
Right.
forums dedicated to street photography, travel photography,
Yeah.
even prime lens photography can be great.
Right.
Connect with like-minded people.
Right. Finding your tribe.
Exactly.
People who get it.
Yeah.
It's appeal of slowing down, observing, capturing those authentic moments.
Absolutely. And speaking of inspiration,
Yeah.
Leo also stresses the importance of studying the work of minimalist photographers, both past and present.
Right, yeah. He mentions Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Yes. A master of street photography.
Yeah, his work is so timeless and elegant.
It really is. And it's a great reminder that you don't need a lot of bells and whistles to create powerful images.
Right.
It's all about composition, timing, capturing that decisive moment.
Exactly. And there are plenty of contemporary photographers carrying on that tradition of simplicity and visual impact as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So where can we find those contemporary minimalist photographers?
Well, online platforms like Flickr, 500px, even Magnum Photos are great places to start.
Okay.
You can also search for photographers that specialize in genres like street photography, landscape photography,
Right.
portraiture, things like that.
Cool. I'm definitely adding those to my list.
Uh,
Okay, so we've got the community's inspiration.
yes.
What about the technical side of things?
Okay.
Are there any specific techniques that we can practice to help develop that more minimalist eye?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, composition is key. Learning to see the world in terms of lines, shapes,
Right.
negative space.
Yeah.
That can help you create more balanced, visually appealing images.
Okay.
Light is equally important.
Right.
Pay attention to how light falls on your subject, how it creates those shadows, highlights,
Yeah.
how you can use it to enhance your composition.
So it sounds like slowing down and really observing your surroundings is crucial.
It is. And that's where using a prime lens can be particularly beneficial
Okay.
because you can't zoom in or out.
Right.
You're forced to move your feet,
Yeah.
explore different angles and perspectives, and really think about your composition.
So it's about embracing those limitations
Yes.
and turning them into creative opportunities.
Exactly. Now, if you're looking for resources on composition and lighting,
Yeah.
Leo recommends checking out books like The Photographer's Eye by Michael Freeman
Okay.
and Understanding Exposure by Brian Peterson.
Okay. Yeah.
They're classics for a reason.
I've heard great things about both of those books. They really break down those complex concepts
They do.
into easy to understand language.
Exactly.
So they're accessible for photographers of all levels.
That's true.
What about for those of us who are more visual learners?
Oh, there are tons of fantastic YouTube channels that delve into minimalist photography
Okay.
or even prime lens techniques.
Okay.
You can find photographers sharing their tips on composition, lighting, gear,
Right.
all that good stuff.
Any channels in particular that you'd recommend?
Well, Jessica Kobesi and Peter McKinnon are great resources.
Okay.
Even if they're not strictly minimalist photographers,
Right.
they offer a wealth of knowledge on photography in general.
Yeah.
And you can adapt those principles to fit that minimalist approach.
Yeah. And of course, nothing beats getting out there and practicing, right?
Absolutely. Leo encourages photographers to experiment, try different techniques, push their boundaries, and see what works for them. He actually suggests going on a photo walk with just one prime lens
Okay.
that forces you to think differently
Right.
about composition, to be more intentional, and to really work within those limitations.
It's like a minimalist photography challenge.
Exactly. It's about stripping away those distractions, embracing simplicity, and focusing on the essence of what you want to capture. And who knows, you might even discover a whole new way of seeing the world.
It's amazing how this conversation has come full circle. We started talking about this specific camera,
Right.
the Sigma BF,
Yeah.
and now we're talking about, a whole approach to photography,
Yeah.
maybe even to life in general.
It's funny you should say that. As we've been exploring this concept of minimalism, it's got me thinking about the bigger picture, too.
What do you mean?
Well, the constant churn of new camera models and lenses,
Right.
it creates a lot of waste, both in terms of discarded gear and the resources that it takes to manufacture all that stuff.
Yeah.
So embracing a minimalist approach, focusing on quality over quantity,
Right.
using our gear for longer could actually be a really positive step
Right.
towards more sustainable practices in photography.
That's a really important point. If we're more mindful about what we actually need
Yes.
and resist that urge to constantly upgrade to the latest and greatest, we
Absolutely.
can minimize our environmental impact
For sure.
and create a more sustainable future for photography.
I couldn't agree more. It's about shifting our values, appreciating craftsmanship,
Right.
finding joy in the process of creating, rather than constantly chasing the next shiny object.
And that intentionality, it extends to our creative process as well.
It
If
does.
you're only using one camera and one lens, you're forced to be more present,
Yeah.
more attuned to your surroundings, more deliberate in how you compose your shots.
It's about making the most of what you have,
Yeah.
rather than constantly seeking what you lack. It's about finding beauty in the ordinary, in those everyday moments, and in that simple act of observation.
That's beautifully said, and I think that leads perfectly into the final part of our deep dive.
Indeed. In part 3, we'll explore some practical ways that you can actually incorporate these minimalist principles
Okay.
into your photography workflow.
Awesome.
And we'll share some inspiring examples of minimalist photographers who are pushing the boundaries of the genre.
Sounds fascinating. I can't wait to delve deeper. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into minimalist photography. We've talked about Sigma BF and the philosophy behind it all, but I'm kind of curious about how we actually put these ideas into practice. What are some practical ways we can incorporate minimalism into, our photography workflow?
Well, I think one way is to start with your gear. Instead of accumulating like a massive collection of lenses and accessories, focus on a few key pieces that you really love, the stuff that you actually use regularly. Maybe it's just a single prime lens that forces you to, think differently about composition, or a really lightweight camera bag, one that kind of encourages you to pack light, just the essentials.
Right. It's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. Investing in a few well-made pieces of gear that'll last for years, rather than constantly chasing that latest and greatest thing.
Right, right. And I guess that same mindset extends to your post-processing workflow as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of relying on, those really heavy-handed edits or complex presets, maybe we can try embracing a more natural minimalist approach to editing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just focus on enhancing the images subtly.
Right.
Bring out the best in what you've already captured, rather than trying to transform it into something completely different.
Yeah, it's about respecting, the integrity of the image
Totally.
and kind of letting the moment shine through.
Exactly.
What about subject matter, though? Does minimalism dictate what we photograph?
That's a good question. I think it's more about, how we approach any subject rather than what the subject actually is.
Okay.
Minimalism isn't just limited to, a specific genre
Right.
or subject matter. It's really a way of seeing.
Okay.
A way of, simplifying,
Wow.
distilling your vision. And you can apply these minimalist principles to any kind of photography. Landscape photography, portraiture, street photography.
It's about finding beauty in the ordinary, right? Like in those everyday moments.
Precisely. Those little subtle details that we often just overlook.
Yeah.
It's about slowing down, observing, and isolating those elements that really capture your attention, whether it's the play of light and shadow
Right.
on a building, the texture of a weathered wall, or even just a fleeting expression on someone's face.
It seems like this idea of simplifying your vision can be really liberating.
Oh, absolutely. It frees you from that pressure of having to capture everything.
Right.
You can just focus on what really resonates with you.
Yeah.
What matters.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as much as I, love the idea of decluttering my gear bag,
Yeah.
embracing simplicity, I want to be realistic too.
Yeah.
There are times when certain features or accessories can be super helpful,
Right.
especially when you're working in challenging conditions
Yes.
or pursuing specific creative goals. So how do we balance that desire for minimalism with the practical realities of, photography?
I think it really comes down to intentionality.
Okay.
It's not about rigidly adhering to a set of rules.
Right.
It's about being mindful of the choices you make.
Right.
Making decisions that align with your values, your creative vision.
Okay.
So if a certain piece of gear, actually enhances your creativity, helps you get the shot that you want, then use it.
Yeah. So it's not about deprivation. It's more about empowerment, right?
Totally.
Being in control of your tools, using them intentionally to get what you want.
Yeah. And I think, as with any creative pursuit, there's always room for experimentation.
Yeah.
Growth. What works for one photographer might not work for another.
Yeah. The key is finding what works for you.
Exactly.
expressing your unique voice, and just finding joy in that creative process.
Totally.
As we've been talking about this minimalist photography, I've been thinking about some of the photographers
Yeah.
whose work really embodies this philosophy.
Mm.
Are there any artists you'd recommend checking out for inspiration?
Oh, for sure. There are so many talented photographers
Yeah.
who really embrace this minimalism in their work.
Right.
One that comes to mind is Michael Kenna.
Okay.
His black and white landscapes are stunning. They're just really great examples of minimalist composition,
Yeah.
capturing that essence of place through those subtle gradations of light
Right.
and shadow.
I love his work.
It's beautiful.
It's so serene and evocative. It just transports you.
It does.
Any other photographers you'd suggest?
Another one whose work I really love is Fan Ho.
Uh-huh.
His street photography from mid-20th century Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
It's a masterclass in minimalist composition, capturing those fleeting moments of daily life
Right.
with a sense of poetry and grace.
His images are so powerful and timeless.
They are.
And it's interesting because they really speak to, the human condition,
Right?
even though they were taken, so long ago.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Minimalist photography, its ability to transcend time, place. And it connects us to something, deeper, more universal.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the technical aspects of the Sigma BF camera
Uh-huh.
to the broader philosophy behind minimalist photography.
Right.
And even some of the practical applications. So as we wrap up our deep dive, is there any final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that minimalist photography, it's a journey.
Go.
It's not like a destination.
Right. It's a process of, discovery, experimentation,
Yeah.
refinement. And it's about finding what works for you, what helps you express yourself,
Yeah.
what brings you joy in that process of creating.
Yeah.
So embrace the challenge. Be open to those new possibilities.
Right.
And enjoy it.
That's great advice. And remember, no matter what camera you're using, what subject you choose, the most important thing is to be present, to observe, and to capture the world through your unique perspective. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into minimalist photography. We'll see you next time.